Prepare yourself as we dive deep into the exciting and the cringe.
Oh boy, smooching time!
That is the history of the Legend of Zelda television show, back in time when Nintendo let Zelda, Link, Mario become children's cartoons. How a small team of writers, and one was a teenager of just 16, made an entire show when there were only 2 video games in the series, where one writer's romantic obsession with small fairies led to the creation of the show's exclusive character, Sprite. And yeah, she predates Navi. Before we had Epona in Ocarina of Time, there was...
Let's hit the road, Catherine.
We'll compare the show to the video games and go over the differences. How Link's and Zelda's relationship on TV was inspired by another famous show.
Maybe he didn't hear you.
Stop it.
Princess Zelda herself would get a huge makeover in the show, and find out whose idea it was to give her pants. But most importantly, we'll reveal what famous comedian inspired the show's most memorable line.
Well, excuse me, Princess.
Well, excuse me!
Creating one of the greatest memes of all time. And don't worry, I'll go over Zelda and Link's appearance in the cartoon Captain N and why it's a strange sequel to the Zelda TV series. And at the end, I'm going to go over the real reason I believe the Legend of Zelda TV show was cancelled. And it's a reason that I don't find most people ever talk about or mention. And no, it's not because of lack of viewership or whatever degree of quality you think the show is. In fact, I'm going to present to you that I think the show was very successful. I'm Kevin, and this is the history of the Legend of Zelda cartoon TV series, or animated cartoon TV series, however you want to title it. Go! The Legend of Zelda, the video game anyway, exploded onto the scene in 1987, quickly rising to the #1 spot on the sales charts. In fact, Nintendo, the company behind Zelda, was #1 in toys. Yes, toys. You could find The Legend of Zelda sitting near the latest G.I. Joe, Barbie, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. One thing about toy lines in the 1980s was they all had cartoons to help promote and sell more toys. Even the Rubik's Cube had a cartoon, and with sales numbers like Nintendo, you're probably gonna get a phone call from...
It's Hollywood, baby!
I'm sure Nintendo had plenty of offers from many film studios pitching movies and TV show ideas for Zelda, Mario, and whoever else they thought could make them some money. But for years since the release of the NES, there had been nothing, as Nintendo tightly guarded their prized characters. But as Nintendo grew in size in the late 80s, they changed their tune. 1988 would see the release of their 2 biggest games yet, Super Mario Bros. 2 and Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. These highly anticipated games would sell big time.
You came 1,000 miles just for this game?
Yes.
But Nintendo, like any growing company, a TV show would boost the awareness and popularity of Nintendo characters. And this in turn would also boost their licensing programs for breakfast cereals, t-shirts, lunch boxes, even a Zelda trash can. And of course, sell more video games. All upside, no downside for Nintendo. Okay, now you might think that quality mattered within the show. Not really. There was a lot of toy lines that were successful back then, even though their shows were questionable quality, we'll say. To be nice. One television studio that had their sights set on Nintendo was Diffusion Information Communications, shortened to DIC. And they had a big sign on their building that said, "The Incredible World of..."
DIC.
Yes, it's pronounced DIC. The company was originally French. Head of DIC and CEO Andy Hayward pursued Nintendo for a year, trying to get them to make a cartoon show. Hayward himself had rose to fame with his first show, Inspector Gadget. And from that success, he went on to produce such classics as The Get-Along Gang, The Real Ghostbusters, Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Care Bears, and that's just scratching the surface. By the late 1980s, Andy and some of his big DIC executives flew up to Nintendo of America's headquarters in Redmond, Washington, to meet with Nintendo's senior VP, Howard Lincoln. According to Hayward, Lincoln wanted to see if they could come up with an animated television series for them. The initial concept Andy Hayward, along with his producers, Robbie London and Michael Miliani, came up with was very different than what we would eventually get. They pitched the Super Mario Bros. Power Hour, an hour-long TV block that would feature a variety of Nintendo games and characters. Here we see concept art for Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, Castlevania, California Games, Double Dragon, and Metroid. The Power Hour somewhat resembles the structure of Saturday Supercade, a cartoon in the early 80s that Nintendo licensed Mario and Donkey Kong to be in. Supercade also featured other video game characters that were not Nintendo's, like Frogger, Q*bert, and Pitfall. Nintendo wanted Hayward and DIC to make the Legend of Zelda show based on the second game, because that would have maximized the promotion for the latest Zelda game. Now I know in the Metroid concept art, they have Samus portrayed as a man, when in the video game, Samus is clearly a woman. And the Castlevania, well, there's just too much to unpack with that whole situation, so we're not going to even touch it. The idea though, at this stage in the game, it's really just a bunch of DIC executives pitching ideas to Nintendo, hoping they'll say yes. Nintendo is not going to care about all these lore mistakes that DIC made. They have too good a resume for this to matter. Besides, DIC is just going to hire a bunch of writers, and the idea is that they will fix all those lore issues. At least that's the hope. Andy Hayward's main goal was always Super Mario. At this stage, no one at DIC was sure they would even get Zelda or any of the other shows, but Hayward sealed the deal for Mario and Zelda. The Super Mario Bros. Power Hour was built to compete against the popular Disney Afternoon. The Power Hour was originally to be the second part of a 2-hour block of 2 shows, titled King Koopa and the Fox Fun Club. The Fox-owned KTTV was one of the main local broadcast channels Hayward was targeting to sell the Power Hour to. The first hour would consist of the cartoon Muppet Babies and Alvin and the Chipmunks, and then 2 episodes of Mario, Zelda, and/or some of the other Nintendo characters I mentioned. A Koopa character host appearing throughout the 2 hours would glue the whole thing together. But it turns out the independent TV channels and KTTV weren't interested in a full hour of content. They only wanted a half hour. So the Super Mario Bros. Power Hour switched to only being a half hour, becoming the Super Mario Bros. Super Show that would also contain The Legend of Zelda. And DIC pitched another show about a paperboy from the game Paperboy. This show would eventually turn into
Captain N, the Game Master.
The Zelda characters would eventually make guest appearances in this show. The vision Andy Hayward had for the Super Mario Bros. Super Show was a combination of animation and live action. The show focuses almost entirely on Super Mario. He was Nintendo's most popular character after all. So Mario would play 4 days a week, and Zelda would be banished to the last and final weekday, Fridays. Not entirely a bad thing. Mario would get an order for 52 episodes, and The Legend of Zelda got an order for a mere 15 episodes.
Huh?
This equals the magic number of 65. Why 65 episodes? That's typically the number of episodes a cartoon needs for syndication. Live action tends to need about 100. There are exceptions to these rules, I know. Some shows have done it with less. Syndication is important, and it's because it's where the real money is made.
Mine, I think. Hey!
Companies like DIC would license out their shows to other TV stations and local area channels to replay the shows again and again in reruns. Both Zelda and the Mario cartoon would get what the television world calls bumpers, where the beginning and the end of each episode, they would bump in the live action parts of the show. Also between them is where commercial breaks tend to go. Andy Hayward and his DIC execs may have sealed the deal with Nintendo, but as they began hiring the crew to make the show, concerns began to arise.
Andy got the idea, he got the deal, but it was like, we have to go on at this date. We were like, this is impossible, there's no way to get a series done this fast. Dan Reba, animation director, The Super Mario Super Show.
For making a show with 2 shows inside of another show, there's only one way to go about it: divide and conquer. For the leads writing the Super Mario portion of the show, DIC put in charge Reed and Bruce Shelley, while the live-action portion will be done by the production team behind DIC's other runaway success, Pee-wee's Playhouse. For the main role of Super Mario, they got WWE Wrestling Hall of Famer Captain Lou Albano. Then for his brother Luigi, that went to actor Danny Wells, best known for his role as Charlie the bartender on The Jeffersons. Now on to the important part, Zelda. Bob Forward would take up lead writing duties. In many ways, Mr. Forward was well suited to writing a fantasy kids show, having written episodes for another famous fantasy character, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, where the mighty He-Man battles against the evil Skeletor and his minions to protect Castle Grayskull. Where Bob Forward only wrote a few episodes of He-Man, he is credited with writing 15 episodes of the fantasy princess, She-Ra, He-Man's sister. In fact, most of the Zelda TV team had worked on He-Man and She-Ra, as many of the Super Mario Super Show crew had come from the famed animation studio, Filmation, which abruptly closed, so the Super Mario show would be their first jobs after the death of Filmation. Before Bob Forward even wrote the Zelda TV series, he'd already built up quite a resume, having written for Ghostbusters, Cops, and Brave Star. His biggest break, though, would come after Zelda when he wrote the critically acclaimed Beast Wars, Transformers, and X-Men Evolution. Now let's go over the research materials Bob Forward had to make the Legend of Zelda TV series. When Bob started, the only Zelda game out was the original Legend of Zelda. Zelda 2 wasn't out yet, meaning no Breath of the Wild, no Twilight Princess, no Wind Waker, and no Ocarina of Time. They didn't even have the Zelda CDI games.
We were just about to have a feast.
Great!
Okay, maybe that was a good thing.
The Legend of Zelda was going to be a small addendum to the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, which was the actual star of the time slot. DIC needed somebody who could handle it on their own, without a lot of supervision. After we had the initial discussion, they supplied me with a VHS tape of a playthrough of the game itself, since I wasn't actually a person who played video games. Not that I had any objection, I just hadn't really done it. They had a playthrough of the game that my sons were fascinated by. That was my research for it. Bob Forward.
One strange thing Bob said about the VHS playthrough Nintendo supplied was that it was played by Charlie's Angels star and James Bond star, Tanya Roberts. Why was it her playing it? Bob has no idea. She is in the film Beastmaster, so maybe she likes the fantasy genre. Who knows? Other members of the crew, like director John Grusd, dove into playing the games a lot, to the point where he says he got really good at them.
Nintendo wanted us to base the show on the new game Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link because, it's great marketing. What they did was give me the Japanese version of the game because it wasn't out here yet. I didn't know anything about the game when I started. I never played them. I wasn't a gamer or anything. That's how I learned how the characters move, the sound effects, the music. I got to be able to do the games all the way through pretty quickly, as a matter of fact, because I knew all the shortcuts. I could get through both of them in less than 2 minutes, probably. It's pretty fast. John Grusd.
Sitting behind Grusd, watching him play many times, and taking notes was writer Phil Harnage, who would pen episodes of both Zelda and Mario in the Super Show. At DIC, Harnage was a writer, usually brought on early to projects for ideas and show development. Harnage had written episodes for He-Man and She-Ra, as well as G.I. Joe, Fat Albert, and later he would go on to write the series concept for Captain Planet. Nintendo also provided Bob Forward with a copy of The Legend of Zelda. He says he found the game's instruction manual quite helpful in laying out the parameters of the show. The instruction manual tells the story of Link saving an old woman from some evil henchman. Turns out she's Impa, nursemaid to Princess Zelda. She tells Link of how the Prince of Darkness Ganon has spread his evil minions across the land in search of the 8 pieces that make up the Triforce of Wisdom. Ganon already holds the Triforce of Power, and with both he would be unstoppable and take over the land of Hyrule. That's why Princess Zelda shattered the Triforce and scattered it across the land, so Ganon couldn't get to it before he captured her. Impa tells Link he must find the 8 pieces of the Triforce, defeat Ganon, and save Zelda. And so, here's where the game begins. Not sure if Bob had the manual for Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, since it wasn't out yet, but the manual for Zelda 2 probably wouldn't have helped him much, as most of it takes place hundreds of years before the actual game. It's about Zelda's ancestor, also named Zelda, and how she had a falling out with her brother, and this evil magician puts her into an eternal sleep. Again, it's Impa explaining all this to Link, and then Link has to go on a quest to awaken the sleeping Zelda and save Hyrule. Ganon's barely in the game, and you never fight him. For all the talk we just did about Impa, she's nowhere to be found in the Zelda TV show. I have big history videos on Zelda 1 and 2, so you can go check those out if you want to know more about the wild development of making those games. Bob Forward wrote a show Bible for Zelda, and Phil Harnage helped add to it. It came in handy for when Bob Forward suggested his younger sister, E. Forward, come on board and try to write an episode.
My brother somehow ended up suggesting I try writing an episode, and I was able to turn out a couple of scripts that, with his editing, ended up getting used. I was about 16 to 17 at the time. The only direction I had was the show Bible, which outlined the basic characters and sorts of stories they were looking for. I didn't have a Nintendo, so I rented one and the game and tried to play it, but I didn't get very far. But the basic relationships were all established in the show Bible. Ganon, bad guy. Zelda, tough girl. Link, charming scamp. Triforce MacGuffin, etc. Eve, forward.
Eve may have been young, but she would go on to become quite a formidable writer in her own right, lending her writing skills to the shows Biker Mice from Mars and G.I. Joe. In spite of her lack of gamer skills, she did have skills in another game, Dungeons & Dragons, the tabletop fantasy role-playing game.
I did play Dungeons & Dragons, though, at the time, and some of that feel made it into the show. The 7th episode, Doppelganger, was based on a cursed mirror in D&D. Well, the monsters in Zelda were all based on things from the Nintendo game, same with the weapons, like Link's boomerang. But in D&D, of course, you're always fighting monsters and imagining how cool your character looks doing it, so a lot of the various swashbuckling stuff I like to put in was based on things that had happened in our D&D games. I always thought of Link as more of a rogue than a fighter. Eve, forward.
By studying the video games, the writing team found many things within the game to utilize as Easter eggs and callbacks for us players to enjoy in the show, and it would also make Nintendo happy. From items like the boomerang, bombs, and the whistle, monsters when defeated can drop items, just like in the games.
Whoa! Loot!
One episode has the Armos enemy come to life when touched, just like in the game. Another episode has the Triforce broken up into pieces, and Link and Zelda have to go find it, a cool callback to the main quest of the game. All the dungeon bosses from the first game would be featured, except for Digdogger and Manhandla. But for 80s kids, seeing bosses like Gleeok with their defeated heads floating around, or Dodongo getting defeated by swallowing a bomb, was awesome to see, because it was straight from the game. Plus we see Link using the grappling hook, years before he uses it in Wind Waker, and Link shield surfs, decades before he does it in Breath of the Wild. One subtle thing the show missed was Link is left-handed in the first two video games. In the show, he's right-handed. The show does a nice job of answering some questions you might have from playing the game, such as, how does Link carry all these items? In the show, he has a magic bag. The main story of the Legend of Zelda show would be based loosely on Zelda 1, but Nintendo demanded Zelda 2 elements in the show, so enemies from Zelda 2 were added, such as the tin suits and Louders. In addition to Nintendo's demands, the Zelda TV team also had demands from the networks. Link was not allowed to stab or slash anyone with his sword, but he can zap them, which is from the game. Link's sword in the show is called the Chris Sword. It looks to be modeled slightly after the sword on the cover of Zelda 2. The Chris Sword name was made just for the show. See, no one can die in TV cartoons, so after being zapped, the writers invented Ganon's Jar, where enemies are sent after being zapped. Only evil creatures of Ganon, though. Hylians and other humans can't be zapped away. Ow! These types of rules apply to every kid's cartoon back then. Look at He-Man or Leonardo from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They never use their swords on people or kill anyone. Robots, though, are okay. You can massacre them all day. Beyond what Nintendo wanted and the US networks needed, the top DIC executives also had things they required. Senior Vice President of Creative Affairs for DIC, Robbie London, wanted Princess Zelda and Link's relationship to be based on the main characters from the hit show Moonlighting, starring Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis as private detectives solving crimes, part drama, part comedy, quick witty dialogue, and the slow brewing romance between the two leads. So the idea was to take the adult-themed romantic relationship of Moonlighting and adapt it into a kids' cartoon show. A cartoon primarily targeted at young boys around 6 to 11 years old. Moonlighting creator Glenn Gordon Caron says the inspiration for the show came from watching the play Taming of the Shrew. Yes, the one by Shakespeare. For those of you out there who felt that Zelda was somehow connected to Shakespeare, well, you're welcome. The Zelda-Link duo makes sense within the context of the Super Show, since Mario and Luigi are also a duo. It's the dynamic duo of duos. Also, they had to keep things simple, because Zelda was a show within a show taking the place of another show once a week, and it was for kids. And because the live action parts bookended each episode, the Zelda episodes average around 14 minutes, a runtime that's actually shorter than the typical 22 minutes of a 30-minute show with commercials. Factoring in all the demands from the various parties, Bob Ford built a TV series out of a game with very little in the way of story. In the games, Link and Zelda have almost no personalities and no real dialogue. So, this is where the show Moonlighting comes in. Let's start with Princess Zelda herself. In the first and second game, she's some form of damsel in distress, whether it's saving her from the clutches of an evil villain, or awakening her from an eternal sleep. And well, yep, that's really all there is to her.
We didn't want a Disney princess. We're not going to be selling princess dresses to 6-year-olds, so yeah, she was an action hero in her own right, and that was kind of unique. But the writers didn't come up with Zelda wearing pants. That was something the artists came up with, and Nintendo loved it. Phil Harnage.
Since Zelda is based on Moonlighting, the star of Moonlighting, Sybil Shepherd, has said that her character is a Hawksian Woman.
Whatever that means.
What is a Hawksian Woman? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's a female character archetype from the famous director Howard Hawks, such as Jane Russell in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Angie Dickinson in Rio Bravo, and probably the queen of the Hawksian women, Lauren Bacall from The Big Sleep, and To Have and Have Not. These female characters tend to be calm under pressure.
Stay where you are.
I think I was shitting on somebody's cigarette.
Dangerously flirty.
Yeah.
Quick with a comeback.
Now let's get this straight, Gus. The chaperone's job is to see that nobody else has any fun. But nobody chaperones the chaperone.
But Dorothy.
That's why I'm so right for this job.
And not afraid of sassing men.
You'd make anybody mad.
Suppose I would.
TV show Zelda would have some semblance of these qualities.
And are you feeling strong and brave and noble?
You bet!
Good, because it's time for spring cleaning.
Don't sass me.
So I bring up all these famous women in film and in Moonlighting to show you this type of character or archetype at its peak. This is her at the best of the best. And Zelda from the TV show falls somewhere lower on the mountain. You see these women at the top? They are countered by their equally strong counterparts, the men. And that brings us to the Zelda TV show's weakest link. Literally. Where Humphrey Bogart, Cary Grant, and Bruce Willis lead with their wisecracking overconfidence, resourcefulness, and street smarts to get them in and out of danger.
Okay. You win. He's dead.
They are just as quick-witted as their female leads, which, believe me, they need to be, because otherwise these women would toss them aside. Or worse.
Your little man died to keep you out of trouble. And I got your money for you. Do you want it?
Link, on the other hand, tends to be more of a obnoxious and whiny teenager.
Yeah, another beautiful day in the magical kingdom of Hyrule. Boring place.
He tries to get out of cleaning and doing chores around the castle so he can go off fishing. It is possible that trying to get out of doing his chores is to relate more to kids not wanting to do their chores. I mean, what kid wants to do his chores? When making a kid's show or film, you typically want the lead character to be a few years older than the child, so that way the child can imagine themselves as becoming that character in the future, which may be why Link is more man-child than man.
I'll stand firm. I won't knuckle under. I'll look her right in the eye and lie. I'll pretend to be sick.
How old are Link and Zelda anyway? Well, on the back of the VHS of Tempo Video's release of the show, it says Link and Zelda are both 15 years old. This is from a VHS back cover, so we can't take the information too seriously. But if Link is only 15 years old, then that could explain some of his behavior. Now, I know some of you look at Link in the show and you're like, he looks 30. Well, the Zelda and Link relationship does come across as very juvenile.
Good boy. Let's go.
Still, how do you take the romantically charged relationship from Moonlighting and convert it into a kid's cartoon? Well, one way is you make it just about a kiss.
Link always wanted a kiss. That was one of Robbie's inventions. I thought it worked out. I was down for it. I kept expecting people to tell us we couldn't do it, but apparently it worked. Bob forward.
It's the running gag of each episode. Every time Link and Zelda are about to kiss, it gets interrupted. Link spends a lot of time in the show dreaming about Zelda, much in the same way a teenager would for a high school crush. Zelda can represent that cute girl across the classroom you like so much, or the rich and popular girl you have no chance with. No, I don't speak from experience. As much as Link pushes Zelda for a kiss, sometimes too much, she does get him back for it.
Next, the hero gets his reward. Ow!
Don't you ever whistle at me again!
To the point where one time he attempts to get to her room by sleepwalking, she throws water on him, almost knocking him to his death. Also, one has to wonder how much Zelda actually likes Link.
Shut up and kiss me.
According to Cynthia Preston, the voice actress behind Zelda, said this when she was asked about Link and Zelda's relationship.
Well, I think she loved him, and she loved teasing him. I mean, there was a lot of teasing. She can be playing that she's annoyed with him, but she's really loving every minute of it, I think. Cynthia Preston.
Where in Moonlighting, both Shepard and Willis's characters grow and change because of the impact they have on each other, we gain a better understanding of them and start rooting for them to get together. It's part of their character arc, and that's the problem with kids' cartoons. They had no character arcs. One reason for this is because episodes can be finished out of order. As an example, episode 7 gets done and then airs before episode 6, so each episode is written to stand alone, with no sequential timeline. In the episode titled The White Knight, Link actually does some good. He rushes to save Zelda, who's been captured by the Zora, even though she totally insulted him and cast him aside for this blonde prince earlier. The prince couldn't save Zelda because...
Sorry, princess, no can do, I'm afraid. These are my hero clothes, and heroes simply do not get dirty.
Yeah. Link, though, is not afraid to get dirty and jumps in straight away. But for any goodwill Link built here, it's all reset by the next episode. He's back to...
Please let me give you a kiss to show my gratitude.
Now that's what I like to hear. Pay attention, princess. You could learn something.
So there's no way for Link to grow as a character and better himself over the course of the show. He remains exactly as he is.
No flies on you.
Nope.
Where the Zelda-Link relationship works best is in the action scenes. Writer Bob Forward really liked his action.
I'd rather not have characters sitting around and talking if I can have them speeding over the landscape and talking while firing their weapons at the same time. It's
where a young tree hugger like myself really enjoyed the show the most back in the day, because it felt like the game. Well, close enough to the game. The last thing executive producer Robbie London wanted was a catchphrase, and it would go on to be one of the greatest memes ever, which he got from the legendary stand-up comedian Steve Martin.
Well, excuse me!
So Bob Forward wrote that line into every episode, and then some, just to tease Robbie about it.
Well, excuse me, princess. Excuse me, princess. Well, excuse me, princess. Hey, excuse me, princess. Well, excuse me, princess. Excuse me,
Oh, just get moving.
Link says that famous line 29 times across the 13 episodes of the TV series. And with that, we'll excuse ourselves over to the villain. Writer Bob Forward stated that he'd gotten tired of heroes that only restored the status quo. The villain hatches some evil plan, then the hero foils that evil plan, saving the day. To switch up the dynamic, Bob chose to give each side a Triforce, so that the heroes could take initiative rather than always waiting for the villain to do something. The Legend of Zelda's main bad guy, Ganon, wears the long robes of a wizard. Bob Forward said that director John Grusd would complain that these robes were too hard and costly to animate. So, Bob wrote that Ganon just teleported everywhere. One special creation for the show is the Underworld, where Ganon dwells, below Hyrule's northern castle. It's basically just here to take the place of the dungeons from the first two games. Then there's the King of Hyrule himself, Zelda's father, King Harkinian. There's no king mentioned in the first game. The second game talks about a king from many years before the game begins, and he is never named. King Harkinian here does vaguely look like him. The show even mimics this shot from the second game's instruction manual. King Harkinian is more of a bumbling fool than noble ruler, and ends up being Link's wingman in courting Zelda.
You'll need to take flowers. Then you might succeed. Yes. Girls are crazy about flowers.
Flowers. Right. Thanks. Good luck, my boy. Yeah!
Kinda weird. Nintendo didn't want DIC creating too many new characters for the show, except for some one-and-done episode guest stars. Bob Forward did manage to create one recurring character though, the fairy, Sprite, who really likes Link. Much in the same way Tinkerbell is infatuated with Peter Pan. Sprite predates Navi from Ocarina of Time by almost 9 years. Bob saw the fairy in the game and wanted to make her into a character because of his obsession with small fairies like Tinkerbell from Peter Pan. He gives a little too much information about his fairy, fascination. I'd rather not repeat it, so I'll leave a link in the description if you're curious to go read it. And while you're down there, why not hit that subscribe button to help out a small YouTuber like myself if you've been enjoying the video. With character limits imposed by Nintendo, the writers of the show needed more characters, so they gave a voice to the Triforce of Wisdom. Yeah, the Triforce is never spoken in any of the games. But here in the show, the Triforce would give Link and Zelda tips, spoken in riddles, to help them in their fight against Ganon.
To find her, you must make a quest. Seek the wall that has no end.
For US game fans, this will be the first time we'd ever hear Link and Zelda speak words. For the show, the powers that be chose Jonathan Potts as Link, who would go on to have quite a film career, appearing in over 100 TV and film productions, and has lent his voice to over 100 cartoon episodes. From a voice in Beyblade to his more recent roles in the Netflix series Ginny and Georgia, as well as Amazon's Totally Killer. He also appeared in Jason X, which probably only matters to me. As mentioned earlier, for Princess Zelda, Cynthia Preston was cast. Preston, as of this writing, has appeared in 41 films and done more than 240 episodes of television. The long list of TV includes Jack Ryan, 2.5 Men, The X-Files, to a recurring role on Total Recall 2070, for those who remember that show. The Super Mario Bros. Super Show was made under a severe time crunch. Since most of DIC's executives were focused on Mario, Bob Forward and his Zelda writing team had a much more relaxed schedule. Zelda only had to turn in 2 scripts a week for 13 episodes, while Mario had to turn in a whopping 4 scripts a week for 52 episodes. In fact, they were so focused on Mario that DIC CEO Andy Hayward realized no one had overseen the Zelda scripts. Being at the end of the scripting process, Hayward had to sit and read every Zelda script in one go. Head writer Bob Forward said he expected to be reamed by Andy for all the sneaky innuendo he put in. After reading them all, Hayward looked up and said, "Everyone's a gem," and he didn't change anything. Super Mario had a sizable team for animating the episodes, but with such a fast approaching deadline, they stuck to keeping the animations simple. Zelda, on the other hand, was outsourced to an animation studio in Korea, where the language barrier added a difficulty to make sure things were animated properly. And there were some goofs. For instance, in the White Knight episode, after Link zaps the Zora, Zelda goes from a dress to her regular clothes, then back to her dress again. Whoops! As for all the live-action portions, they shot those in just 2 weeks. One thing that most would agree came out well was the music, taken straight from the game's 8-bit chiptunes and turned into a full melodic score.
It's the music that comes from the game, all of the little melodies, all of the sound effects. We worked very hard on that.
For many fans, this would be the first time they got to hear the iconic themes from composer Koji Kondo beyond their 8-bit chiptunes of the NES. One other thing I should mention about DIC: around the industry, there used to be a joke that DIC stood for Do It Cheap. This was from the company's business practices of outsourcing animation overseas, staff hired and paid per program rather than a year-round basis, and largely its anti-union politics. And the Legend of Zelda TV show was slapped with all of this, as the writers and voice actors don't get any royalties from the show. Despite harsh deadlines, less than stellar wages, and long workdays, the Super Mario Bros. Super Show and The Legend of Zelda were ready for release. And by the end, animation director Dan Riba said it best.
We tried so hard just to get it done. It's a miracle the thing exists.
Before we get to the release and why the Zelda TV show was cancelled, I want to go over the show's loosely based sequel. And I do mean loosely based.
Captain N, the Game Master.
It tells the story of Kevin who gets sucked into the world of Videoland. Turns out Kevin's destiny is to become Captain N and save Videoland from the evil Mother Brain. Yeah, the one from Metroid. Cynthia Preston and Jonathan Potts would reprise their roles as Zelda and Link. There are a bunch of Nintendo characters in the show, yet they're all kind of strange parodies of themselves and don't act like their video game counterparts. Link and Zelda, though, act like their counterparts from the show, but maybe that's because they were already established in the other show, and Captain N did have some of the same writers from the Zelda TV show. Link and Zelda don't appear until the show's second season, taking place after the events of the Zelda TV show, where Ganon has been defeated. Both Link and Zelda got outfit update redesigns, and Link seems to have dropped his wanting a kiss from Zelda. His motivation instead focuses more on his friendly competition with Kevin. Captain N leans heavily into Zelda 2, featuring enemies and bosses found in that game. They even travel to the second game's Island Palace. Zelda and Link make guest appearances in 4 episodes. By Season 3, Captain N's final season, Zelda and Link are nowhere to be found. The Legend of Zelda TV show had a big impact on other types of Zelda media that came out around that time. One was the comic series from Valiant Comics. In it, Link and Zelda, especially Zelda's outfit, was modeled after the shows. Link is here again being a tryhard for a kiss from Zelda. Then there's the notoriously so bad they're awesome Zelda games for the Philips CDI. Zelda's outfit here again bears a resemblance to the TV shows. And yep, Link still wants a kiss.
How about a kiss? For luck.
You've got to be kidding.
Both the comics and the CDI games keep the name King Harkinian for Hyrule's illustrious ruler. And that's really where it ends for this odd Zelda universe.
You know Link? Sure. He gave me his canteen for a kiss. You kissed him?
Now let's go back and take a look at the Legend of Zelda cartoon series premiere.
Power. Tune in for the wildest weekday fun in the universe.
The Super Mario Bros. Super Show premiered its initial run on September 4th, 1989, and ran through December 1st in syndication, with Super Mario Bros. Playing Monday through Thursday and The Legend of Zelda on Fridays.
What's the previews on your screen? Legend of Zelda's exciting scenes.
The show was popular, boasting high ratings. I remember both shows being the big talk of the schoolyard, where we'd play fight and pretend with our wooden swords that we could zap beams like Link, with many arguments over who we had a bigger crush on, Princess Zelda or Princess Toadstool. Yeah, she was Toadstool back then. She wasn't called Peach till later. The title of this video should tell you what Princess Team I was on. Nintendo didn't stop there. Only days after the premiere of the Super Show saw the premiere of Captain N, the Game Master. It was only the first season, so Link and Zelda weren't in it yet. The Super Mario Bros. Super Show, along with Zelda, ran for years in syndication until 1994. Then it went into another syndication run on the Family Channel, now known as Freeform. Due to the popularity of the Zelda portion, certain episodes got released on VHS in 4 volumes. These videotapes saw a wide release in North America, except the Kiss and Tell VHS tape, as it was only available through a mail-in promotion with Nesquik, along with 2 Super Mario tapes. The Zelda TV series would never be completed on VHS, and it wouldn't be until many years later before the entire series was released on home video. The first DVD of The Legend of Zelda show came in 2002 with Mario's Greatest Movie Moments. Despite the DVD's title, it did include 2 bonus episodes of The Legend of Zelda. Eventually, the complete Zelda TV show would be released on DVD, and it would get a few different revamps and re-releases as company licenses and rights changed hands over the years. The show would also be released on, taken off various streaming services. I'm sure it's somewhere if you look around today. DIC is no longer around, as it was acquired by Cookie Jar Group in 2008. Now let's ride into the final chapter and go over the cancellation of The Legend of Zelda TV show. Despite its high viewership and popularity, The Legend of Zelda TV show would not continue. Those initial 13 episodes, that would be it. They would never make any more. So, what happened? Well, I think the answer is pretty simple. There were no other Zelda games. Let me explain. Nintendo wanted The Legend of Zelda TV show to help promote the video game, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. Same with the Super Mario Bros. Portion of the show was there to promote Super Mario Bros. 2. And DIC did continue the Super Mario Bros. Show, but it became The Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3 to promote the Super Mario Bros. 3 game. and then came Super Mario World for, you guessed it, to promote the game Super Mario World. And through all this, there were no new Zelda games. The next Zelda game, A Link to the Past, didn't come out in the US until 1992, and by then Nintendo had given up on cartoons altogether. Had there been another Zelda game for the NES, I believe we would have seen another Zelda show based on that game. Zelda and Link were basically demoted to Captain N in Season 2 because there were no new Zelda games at the time. Captain N's writer Jeffrey Scott said Mario never appeared in Captain N because Mario was the most popular. Zelda and Link weren't in Season 3 of Captain N because by then Zelda 2 was old news. That's why Captain N Season 3 instead uses newer games from around that time, such as Final Fantasy. The only reason Nintendo ever agreed to make these shows was so that they would sell more Nintendo games and merchandise. Did the Legend of Zelda TV show help sell more copies of Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link? And did it make Link and Zelda more popular among kids? I think the show more than succeeded in doing that. When the first Legend of Zelda came out, most kids, me included, thought Link was named Zelda. Thanks to the TV show and naming the second game The Adventure of Link helped so many kids realize who was who. Though one could argue the memes are where the show's real success lies. There's not much to Link in the early video games, in character or in pixels, but that's what made it easy for 80s kids to project their own personality and traits onto him. In a time where there was no internet, no YouTubers, no social media dedicated to Zelda. Before the show, there was only the games, some merchandise, and Nintendo Power magazine. And in a time where news report after news report questioned whether kids should be playing video games,
does it make them, brain dead, as you said, or isn't there a certain amount of imagination that you have to use for this game?
sometimes it felt like the adult world didn't even try to understand why you loved video games so much.
Maybe you will be brain dead from staring at this thing all the time.
No.
And that they would have been perfectly happy for the names Mario, Zelda, and Link to be gone forever. But one thing people did respect back then was television, because both kids and adults watched it. And to see The Legend of Zelda and Super Mario on TV helped legitimize Nintendo as a force to be reckoned with, and that they were here to stay. For many of us kids in 1989, Fridays were made even better because we had The Legend of Zelda animated series. And it was also an acknowledgement that the world was starting to see what we saw, that The Legend of Zelda was worthy of so much more. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you want to continue the Legend of Zelda fun, I got histories of Zelda 1 and 2 over here you can check out. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as it really helps out the channel. And hit that notification button so you know when I put up my next gaming history. I'm Kevin, signing off.